The New York Knicks pull away late from the Portland Trailblazers for yet another win without Jalen Brunson. We're going to tell you how 2 second-half adjustments completely changed the game.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster, and of course, the Saturday host of Locked On NBA. Go check out that pod from the other night if you haven't already. He is Alex Wolf, editor-in-chief of The Strickland, the greatest Knicks website in the whole wide world. You can check them out on all forms of social media at thestrick.land. This is Locked On Knicks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. If you haven't already, be sure to join thousands of other Knicks fans in subscribing to the podcast on both YouTube and, of course, on your favorite podcast platform of choice to get the best Knicks coverage on the internet, if I do say so myself, at least 5 days a week, sometimes even more than that, and become an everydayer in the process. But if you're a real sicko and that's not enough for you, we highly recommend you check out the Locked On Knicks newsletter. That's right. It's the one-stop shop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. You can sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Knicks newsletter to get writing from Alex and I, our team of national writers here at Locked On. And I know we're in the dying days, but if you want fantasy basketball advice to go win your title, Josh Lloyd contributes an immense amount on that front. We also want to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. On today's show, we're gonna get into those two key adjustments that I think changed the tenor of this game. Part of those two key adjustments is that it was a dominant night for both OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. I was really impressed with Karl-Anthony Towns' defense, Josh Hart's playmaking. Landry Shamet got hot. Mitchell Robinson had some vintage moments. And of course, it was Clyde's 80th birthday, and the broadcast was all about that. So we're going to hit on all of those throughout this pod. But Alex, it was a game that similar to the game in Portland, looked like it was going to come down to the wire again. Portland, after the Knicks kind of took control in the second quarter, went on an extended run, first to get back into the game and then to open the third, stretch the lead out to 68-54. From that point on, the Knicks outscored them 56-25, three different runs. It was 10-0 right after that 14-point lead. Then it was a 9-0 run near the end of the third. And then 10-0 run to get back into the game. 12-0 run to open the fourth to reassert control. And then at the end of the game, when Portland cut it to 96-90, a 14-3 run there. I thought all of that was spurred by two adjustments from the Knicks coaching staff. The decision to start using Josh Hart as a screener and in turn put Donovan Clingan into the action. Mikal Bridges feasted on that. And then moving OG Anunoby onto Denny Avdija, where he pretty much shut him down after Avdija had 22 points in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, I'll touch on the Clingan thing first. Like, I was super impressed with him, just like the last time that the Knicks played the Blazers. Like, I don't know. I mean, I guess we've been sort of fooled before by guys that have put up like high block numbers and whatever in limited minutes as a rookie. Like Walker Kessler comes to mind as another guy of like a similar profile recently that like seemed like he was really destined to become like this potential like defensive player of the year candidate or whatever, and then that just kind of hasn't come to fruition, whether it's coaching or whatever. But like something about this kid like really stands out to me in terms of how he approaches the game and like how much he's already affecting it, and like is able to affect a guy like a Karl-Anthony Towns like in his rookie season, like a 10-year NBA vet who makes his living on scoring the basketball. He's already able to affect that much with him. And so to your point, they kind of need to start figuring out how to attack him differently, because he was just kind of like playing back, like playing a little bit of drop and waiting for Cat on the inside. They also played zone for a little bit at times in this game to, try to, get the Knicks off guard, which they did once or twice. And, that's been kind of a thing for the Knicks, where a zone is a little hard for them to attack, especially at first when the team first deploys it against them. But, in the end, yeah, to your point, like they started finding new ways to attack Clay, and it kind of took him out of the game in the second half and let Mikal Bridges really get going. I mean, Mikal second half ends up going for 21 of his, what did he end with? 28
28
points. Yeah.
28.
So 21 of his 28, 10 of 15 shooting, 1 of 3 from the 3-point line, also had 4 assists. I mean, just continued great play from him with not just scoring the ball, but also attacking the defense, passing out of certain scenarios and creating assists and, creating buckets for his teammates. So, between him and OG, just a phenomenal second half, but really like OG kind of just dominated the whole game. Mikal really took over in the second half and put together a really solid 21 and a half minutes of play.
Yeah, I thought Mikal's passing. I mean, it stood out for a few games now, but 7 assists. I could pull up the game log. I think pretty close to the best he's had. He's had last 3 games now. 7 assists against Portland, 5 against Milwaukee, 9. I forgot about that. 9 against the Clippers. 1 against Dallas. Before that, 4, 6, and 7. So he is really elevated that part of his game after he's averaging like 2 per game on the season before this recent stretch. That's been big, and just his ability to get it like off of movement and make a play. Like he had one where he came off a pick and roll, gave it to Mitch, sprinted over, got it back, turned into a dribble handoff. He drives, draws again, like with Mikal. It's often not drawing 2. It's often drawing 1.5, but that was enough to spray it out to the line right for a 3. Had another one in the first quarter where the shot clock was dwindling. Shamet hits him on a curl, hard drive. Actually, on that play, he draws 2, 4 guys looking at him, sprays it out opposite wing. Shamet blows by the closeout, hits a runner. Then Mikal caps off the first quarter with that 40-foot buzzer beater. For whatever reason, just loves to hit buzzer beaters against Portland. Hit Precious Achua on a short roll for a little floater. And then again, just the adjustment from Tom Thibodeau, which I'm curious why they didn't open the game with this. Maybe it was just one of those things where Tibbs was like, all right, if we can stay in the first half and we don't give them time to adjust to this, like we're going to dominate the second half, because when a team puts a big on Hart, especially on a night where Hart is like scared to shoot, and he made 1 3, and then we saw him airball another 3. We saw him basically like not take a jumper until the final minutes of the fourth quarter. From that point, it seemingly always makes sense to just use Josh Hart as a screener. They started doing that, and because of it, Mikal just over and over again, like getting to his spots, fadeaway jumper, like some creative passing, like again hitting Mitch on a short roll, like when they blitzed him, that led to an OG 3. And then I just thought the defense from Mikal Bridges in the second half, like had one play where he just completely shut down Shaedon Sharpe. Sharpe panicked, chucked it out of bounds. Another one where Sharpe beat him initially, and Mikal recovered to swat him, ended up with a Mitch dunk on the other end of the floor. And then the clutch shot making just late in this game, like where he accounts in the fourth quarter for 10 straight points, scored 7 of them. One of them was a spray out to Shamet for a 3, and then put a fader in Reith's eye after Portland had cut it to 5, making it 92-87. So like it was just such a complete game from Mikal Bridges, and I thought the way he dominated the fourth quarter is like a really good sign for someone like whose biggest issue has been confidence this year.
Yeah, I think, again, I don't want to keep like hitting on this point every episode lately, but the greatest blessing of this Brunson injury has been that he and OG have been essentially forced to like assert themselves. It's like, because it's Cat has been, I don't want to say like flighty, like there was a number of games where he had his like 25 to 30 points as well, but like in a game like this one, he was clearly being taken out of the game by Donovan Clingan, and like it was like, okay, well, other people are going to need to step up. And normally this is where Jalen Brunson would just kind of get the ball a million times and hopefully, pull you out of the game and get you a win. But, that's just not on the table right now. So Mikal and OG have had to kind of find ways to find the best versions of themselves. And for Mikal, it's like this version, I would assume more like what he did with Brooklyn last year. And when he was more of a number 1 option, where it's like, yeah, you're going to initiate the action sometimes. You're going to bring the ball down the floor. You're going to run pick and roll. You're going to have to pass out a situation sometimes, and you're going to look to get to the rim. And, he does, from time to time stop and shoot his mid-range shot or whatever, because that's kind of his bread and butter. But he's been looking to get all the way in more often. He's been looking to kick more often. And then in OG's case, it's like, hey, by the way, you're like 6'8", like I don't know what his listed weight is, but probably like 250 pounds. Like he's big, like he's huge, big shoulders, like the ability to just throw people around if he wants to. And it's like that's finally clicked with OG. And he's also realized like, oh, I can I have the ability and the athleticism to go up for dunks, and they're also not going to call me for a technical if I hang for an extra half a second, to make sure that I land safely or whatever. I almost feel like that was some of his trepidation about going up sometimes, is like, you don't want to hurt yourself. And I can't blame the guy who's had, lower body injuries in his career at, various times, like wanting to protect himself in that way. But, this game, I mean, Clyde, shout out Clyde, first shout out of the show of, on his 80th birthday, he pointed out, he asked Breen at one point, and who is it, that they're always shouting out with the stats? Is it, I forget the name. I think the person is on Twitter too. It's a shame that I can't remember what their name is. But the person that they're always shouting out, who's the statistician, didn't get it in Mike's ear quick enough, I guess. But Clyde was like, "How many dunks has he had, Mike?" It feels like he's got like 6. And it was just dunk fest from OG, and him just asserting himself. Like, he only took 5 threes in this game, and yet ended with 28 points, like, and only hit 2 threes and had 28 points because he just kept putting his shoulder down and getting into guys and like going up for dunks or layups or whatever. And it was just more of the same of what we've seen from him lately. Although, Gavin, maybe for the next segment, I mean, you had pointed out a lot of what helped the Knicks come back was a defensive adjustment that they made with OG as well, which was kind of a key down the stretch of this game.
Yeah, we'll get into it in just a sec here on Locked On Knicks. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Game Time. There's nothing, and I mean nothing in the world, like watching basketball live. The energy, the crowd, the sound of the sneakers on the hardwood, and maybe even a celebrity sighting courtside. That's not a maybe at MSG. If you want to catch a game in person, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. They have easy ticket shopping. I just checked out the Game Time app the other day, and there are amazing deals on some huge matchups coming up. Seriously, you definitely want to get there before the playoffs start, and then, of course, when the playoffs start. They have super deals, Game Time Picks, highlight super deals, giving you the best bang for your buck, and they offer peace of mind with seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and a lowest price guarantee you can book with total confidence. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, what's up, guys? We are back here on Locked On Knicks. To your point, Alex, the main reason Portland was ahead in the first half was Denny Avdija, who, to be clear, this was not an anomaly against the Knicks. He had something like 33 and 10 in Cleveland the other day. Like, he is turning into maybe the single best contract in basketball at this point, and someone who could, like, in a few years be making an all-star team while making, I don't know, something like $12 million a year. I still can't believe the Wizards traded him. He's really good, but I was even more confused than about the Wizards trading him, why the Knicks didn't start this game with OG Anunoby on him. OG did spend some time on Anthony Simons in the first half, who finished 5 for 20, so I guess you give Tibbs some credit there. But OG, like, complete. I have to be very specific in how I phrase this. OG, when he was on him, completely took him out of the game. Avdija scored something like 9 of his 11 points in the second half when OG wasn't on him. The only one he scored in OG was like in a pick and roll where he snaked it back. Like, he basically had no success going at OG one-on-one. And to your point, just like the willingness for like OG to just bulldoze his way to the rim over and over again. Like, early in this game, it was going into Simons in transition. It was posting up Simons to draw foul off an off-ball screen. There was a really fun play where he ran a pick and roll with DeLon Wright. I think, according to our guy Shax, this is called a gator lob, but Wright then sprays it to Hart, and Hart hits OG belatedly on the roll for a jam. That was really fun. Off the dribble, he had a play where Mitch set like a screen for him baseline. He rejected it, snakes it back to the middle, hits a jumper. At that point, had 10 of the Knicks' first 14 points. He posted up Simons and took a hard dribble to the middle, and you just saw like Portland panic, and they were like, oh, he's going to put our guy in the stanchion. 3 of them claps, live dribble, one-handed righty pass to a cutting Precious for a one-handed jam. I thought that was one of the best plays of the entire game. And then in the second half, just like anticipating in the passing lane, like he picked off that one Simons pass where Cat actually played really good drop D, got a dunk on that, had another poke away for a steal that was intended for Kamara, got another dunk off of that. And then in the fourth quarter, just like some big time plays, like shot clock dwindling, hits an isolation, like mid-range 1 foot fadeaway. That was just ridiculous. And something that stood out to me, I don't know if you've noticed this, but with both him and Mikal, like there's been an uptick in their rebounding as Cat has gone from like the best rebounder in basketball to merely like a very good one over the last like couple of weeks and really the last like 2 months or so. But OG had a sequence like that basically put this game away, got a contested defensive rebound, like in heavy traffic. And then Cat missed a fadeaway. And then OG on the offensive end grabs it, puts it back up for a dunk. Like just the physicality he's had on display and the scoring mindset in 12 games since Brunson's got hurt now. 23 points, 5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 47% from the field, 38% from three, 88% from the line. If I'd wanted to cheat and take out that Clippers game, the first one where he kind of sucked, the stats are even better. He's been amazing.
Yeah, and to your point, it to go back to the Avdia adjustment, it was just interesting, like watching in the first half, they had Bridges on Avdia, and to your point, like OG on Simons a bit. That just seemed like a classic case of like role reversal, right? Like, why would you not want Bridges on Simons, who Bridges has been the guy that you've been able to put on those quick guards? And not to say that OG did a bad job or anything, but it became obvious pretty quick that like Avdia was doing basically like what we're describing OG's been doing to people. Just was like throwing his shoulder into Mikal, creating space, getting down low, and just kind of bulldozing into him. Bulldozer finesse, as Clyde might say again. Another Clyde counter number 2. But just getting inside and bullying his way in for points, and he was shooting really well in the first half. I think he did the most of his damage in the first half. What did he end? 9 of 15 shooting, 2 of 4 from 3, 22 of his points in the first half, and he was a plus 20 when he was on the floor. So I mean, he had a huge impact in the first half of the game, and then that got mitigated quite a bit the rest of the way out. He still ends with 33 points, but he was stymied enough. He still did fine. He still made like one crazy circus shot in the second half that
was crazy.
Yeah, another Clyde remark of like he couldn't make that shot again if you paid him to. It was because he was just kind of falling out of bounds, tosses it up. It takes one bounce cleanly off the top of the hoop in a legal area, and then bounces into the hoop. Just crazy stuff. But yeah, I agree with you entirely. I think that adjustment, putting OG on him, made a huge difference and stopped the only guy that was really by himself, like kind of decimating the Knicks. I mean, I guess Shaedon Sharpe kind of had his moments. He ended up with 23 on 10 of 18 shooting, but he didn't look entirely comfortable in the second half either. I think just thanks to the fact that like he wasn't able to operate off of Avdia quite as much or whatever. But yeah, I also will give both of us props. We both really like Shaedon Sharpe. I think he's turning into a really good NBA player. Kind of envious that he's on the Blazers. They definitely have they said it a million times in the broadcast. Yeah, they're on their way up. They're definitely they're on their way. I think they're starting to kind of figure things out a little bit. But yeah, anyway, I think maybe we should move to another player here. I'll say I think Josh Hart had a fantastic game again as well. 14 points, 8 boards, 9 assists, 3 steals for Josh Hart. Shot 5 of 10. My only complaint with him in this game is there was at least one time where he got the ball and had a wide open 3 and just completely passed it up. And I just again was just like, dude, come on, like just start shooting them, like just start getting them up right now. Like let's get in motion. Like it's 10 games until the playoffs. Like let's get the wheels turning here as far as your 3-point shot going into playoff form from last year. Because it's gonna have to get a lot better. He's definitely more in playoff form of 22-23 than 23-24 at the moment, where he seems a lot more tentative. It was often inbounds at one point. He got it, and I mean he had just nobody within 10 feet of him, and yet just kind of in the interest of getting the play rolling the way that I guess they had drawn it up, he just pulled the ball, and dribbled over, handed off to Mikal. Mikal ended up making a nice, that was, one of the aforementioned screens that they ran with those two. So Mikal ended up with a nice midi, but I would love to see Hart like start trying to find that 3-point shot again and getting confident in it, but hard to complain. I mean, in total, he was doing a lot of the same stuff that he's been doing for the last 2 games and what you just hope to see out of him on a game-to-game basis, like near triple-double, lots of defensive rebounds, lots of assists. I mean, I thought that he was doing a really good job keeping his head up, hitting guys in stride. Had a really nice look to OG at one point, if I'm not mistaken, for his one dunk. It was the OG alley oop he threw
Big
at one
lob.
point that one stuck in my head where that was like a gorgeous pass and really powerful stuff from OG too. It was a little more flashy than I feel like we get. I don't know if it was by virtue of where the pass was or what, but he kind of caught it around his midsection, then did a nice little like 1.5 pump to get it up and dunk it in. So that was great to see from both those guys. But it's good to see Hart kind of finding his groove again and finding like the hustle again and the great assist to turnover ratio again, like 9-1 in this one, only 1 turnover to 9 assists. You need that out of him on a game to game basis. I just thought it was a really solid Josh Hart game in this one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was a little more mixed on his night, but I'll get into why in just a sec. Before we talk Karl-Anthony Towns, some more hot shooting from Landry Shamet, and yes, Clyde Frazier's 80th birthday. Shout out to the GOAT. We get into it all in just a sec here on Locked On Knicks. All right, we're back on Locked On Knicks talking Josh Hart, and I don't want to belabor the point because you pretty much hit on what I want to hit on. He has to shoot confidently because even when he did shoot, like when he had the air ball, like was it last game or maybe 2 games ago against the Clippers, like where he had multiple ones that were just like 5 or 6 feet away from the rim. And like, again, like we are not talking about Andre Roberson here. We were talking about a guy who is a career, something like a career 35% 3-point shooter. It's the beauty of ESPN. I can pull it right up. He's a career 34% 3-point shooter, which is not great. But the thing is, like for long stretches of his career, he shot it on decent volume. We saw it in the playoffs last year on the biggest stage. Like he made a 3 to win a series. Like he can do it. He talks about it on his podcast. Like obviously I care what the result is, but I cannot argue with the process if he steps into it and shoots it with just freaking confidence every time. Like that is the thing that is missing on those air balls. Like someone plays 4 feet off you, that's an FU moment if you're Josh Hart. That's professional pride. I am a professional basketball player that frankly like could have been in consideration to make an all-star team this year. Just has to shoot those with confidence. That being said, to your point, like the passing in the half court just continues to be fantastic. He hit Cat on like a transition bomb. That was like another beautiful pass. His defense was kind of hit or miss. Like he had one really nice switch onto Simons in the first half. Did have a play, which seems to happen every game, where he got totally lost off ball on Avdija and was ball watching and then got clipped by Klingon, and Avdija got a wide open corner 3 that got him going in the second quarter. One nice closeout and then another play where he flies by Shaedon Sharpe and gives up a 3. So it was like very up and down until the end of the game, where I thought he really locked in the last 3 minutes. Like again, he was the release valve when Portland started blitzing Mikal. He hit DeLon Wright on a laser for a layup, then set up Cat after the Blazers again. He cut the lead to 6, and then that shot clock beating mid-range jumper that was somewhat of the proverbial dagger, made it 104-92 in favor of the Knicks. But Alex, before we touch on Clyde, I'll leave it up to you. Was there anyone else who intrigued you? Like I thought we didn't mention him yet, but DeLon Wright had 4 stocks in 35 minutes. That was pretty wild. A kind of a classic Mitchell Robinson game with 2 blocks, the one nice dunk inside. I was impressed. I want to touch on Cat's defense, and I think we just witnessed the 2 best games of Landry Shamet season back to back. So I'll leave it to you. What stood out?
Yeah, I mean, I'll do the Shamet part for sure. I've been kind of banging that drum all year, so I feel like my time has finally come.
Yeah.
But yeah, 11 points in this one on 4-9, 3 of 6 from 3, 4 boards, but a team high plus 22. I thought that he was just additive. You know what I mean? That was it. You know, he made his threes. I feel like that's the biggest thing for him. If the threes are going in, he's going to be a positive presence on the floor. I think, you know, we've seen at various points we touched on this show, like he's not always going to be perfect in terms of matchups because of the fact that Tibbs deploys him more as like a nominal 3 out there. So some nights he's just going to have guys that can overpower him a bit on the defensive end and you know, perhaps stymie him on offense if he goes to drive or whatever. But in this game, he was able to make it work. I mean, he you know, he didn't like force any turnovers in this one, at least. Or no, I'm sorry, he had 1 steal in this game. So I mean, you know, he got his hands in there. He was defending well, playing good team defense. I think the main thing though is just the shot has to go in. Like we saw earlier in the season, I didn't think the Knicks were like looking poor in his minutes, but it just felt like they were treading water because so much of when he's on the floor, it's like you're depending on him to make the 3-point shots. And now those are finally starting to go in. I think full strength, there's a chance he maybe still has a job in the playoffs, and maybe still is getting some minutes. I think that he might be playing well enough, and certainly Tibbs is giving him a pretty hefty minute allotment. Like even before the pain injury, even before the Deuce injury, he was starting to flirt with like 15 to 20 minutes a game, pretty much on a game to game basis. And in this one gets almost 20 minutes. I think that he's just sort of locked him into that amount so that he can afford Bridges and OG like just a little more rest here and there when they get a chance to. And maybe that's due to the conversation that Mikal had with Tibbs recently about like limiting the starters minutes a little bit and letting the bench kind of have their time to shine a little more. And we're seeing that out of Shamet now. But yeah, I really like what he's bringing to the table. I mean, you kind of know what you're going to get out of him. It's not, I don't think he's ever going to randomly erupt for like a 40-point game or something. Like he's not that type of player, but he is kind of just turning himself into like a nice traditional 3-and-D role player, I think, which I love to see.
Yeah, I think the one word I'd use from now is confidence, and it was really lacking at times for him this year, and just the way he's attacking. Like that, I already mentioned the play, but when Mikal kicked it out to him, and you just see him pumping, driving, throwing in a runner like that is just an aggressive, confident move. I mean, 2 games in a row now, we've seen him like hit like deep threes on the move in transition. Like that is the shooter he was his first year in the NBA on the Sixers when people were. Maybe this is a little revisionist history, but in my memory, people were talking about him maybe not quite as much as someone like Jared McCain this year with Philly, because McCain was doing more off the dribble, but people were very excited about Landry Shamet, and that's almost been his peak in the NBA. But you're seeing some of that swagger back a little bit. One guy who I didn't even mention when I gave you some options of what to get to next, I want to hit on Precious Achiuwa, who had that personal like 8-0 run. Coming off a 0-point performance last game, hasn't looked great since the Dallas game a few back, but started his night posting up shit and sharp, like shoulder fake one way, pivot outside, got a banker, had that big dunk off the OG drive, took one coast to coast for a layup after catch, just had like a block of the year candidate for him on Anthony Simons. And then another one-man fast break where he had a hesitation into it between the legs, into an outside spin where he just like cooked Denny Avdia. That was his 8th point in a row. Really impressive second quarter. I think barely played in the second half after that. I didn't double check that, but really great stretch that helped boost the Knicks. And then for Cat, I wanted to mention his defense because the offense was terrible in this game. 4 for 13, 10 points, just 2 assists. To your point, part of it was that Klinging was guarding Hart and was just kind of allowed to camp out around the rim, and that certainly affected him. But he did have some timely buckets in this game. Like he ended Portland's 10-0 run to begin the third, going at Klinging for an and one layup. I mentioned the block he had on Simons. I thought perfect drop defense. Another time on Simons where he was actually like at the right spot, like at the level and like sunk with him, but not too deep. And that forced Simons into a throwaway, led to an OG junk on the other end. Late in the game, like I don't give him too much credit because Avdia kind of settled, but switched on to Avdia, 2:49 left, and Avdia just chucked up an air ball. Like had another like play where he had great verticality on Simons to force a bad miss that led to another OG layup in transition. Like I just thought he was really, really solid on that end of the floor in this one.
Yeah, I thought so too. He seemed more locked in, than he sometimes is there, and more concerned with just getting vertical, which I
Yes.
think should always be the goal for him. Like I don't understand why he gets so handsy sometimes. Like it never works out for him when he decides to try to play defense with his hands. He just doesn't have good hands like that. So like don't try to be Mitchell Robinson, don't try to be, your former teammate Rudy Gobert, whatever. Like don't move your hands forward. Just keep them up. And that's good enough against a lot of people in the NBA, especially like a younger team like this that is still learning how to finish around the rim and, all that stuff. Like most players around the league are not like super duper savvy about getting around a 7-footer with his hands up. So Like, just position yourself well, put your hands up, be ready to potentially take a bump if that's what it takes. But don't move your feet. Like, move your feet to the point where you need to stand there and stay still. But like, if Cat could just learn how to do that, I feel like defense would come so much easier for him. Unfortunately, he's 10 years into his NBA career, so I think it's gonna come and go with the tide. But yeah, in this game, I thought he did it really well. Just getting vertical, getting his hands up, and we saw he was rewarded with a couple of blocks in certain scenarios too, because he is good. I'll give him props. Like, if he gets in the right scenario where, I think it was the Simons one that led to the OG outlet, where Simons just kind of went up and challenged him, and then Cat was able to kind of get up in the air then and get up and just get a fingertip on that one, and that's all it took. Like, he's tall, he has a long wingspan. If you get someone penetrating against you like that, then you can sometimes just make it happen, even if you're just playing a vertical style and not actively trying to get the block. So hopefully he took notes on today, because I thought it was a really good defensive game for him as well, even if the offense left a little to be desired on the overall. But Gavin, I think we've gone long enough. I'm ready. I'm excited to wish Clyde a happy 80th birthday. It was basically what the whole telecast was about. I'm very glad the Knicks gave him a win, because it was one of his Clyde's three things was
one for Clyde, or I think it literally just said Clyde, possibly.
It just said Clyde, and it was like, do it for Clyde, and do it with. He said, do it for Clyde and do it with pride. That was his, and of course, it would be a rhyme. But you and I, like, we never got to see the guy play live. We've, of course, I'm sure that we've both watched plenty of YouTube highlights to familiarize ourselves, and spoke to Harvey Ayrton at one point on our
when
pod.
The Garden Was Eden, buy it. Great book.
Yeah, and that was, for those of you that watch on YouTube, that was pre-YouTube. That was a COVID episode, so you have to go back in the audio feed for that one. But we've heard so much about Clyde, in his playing days or whatever, but we've both gotten to grow up on him. And I mean, like, almost like three generations of Knicks fans now can say that, like those who grew up in the 90s or like the mid to late 90s, whenever it was he was on radio first, and then
I think 88 was his first year, if I remember correctly,
on radio, and then then transferred to TV midway through the 90s, and has been doing it ever since. So I mean, for a guy to be as prolific at both things in his career, of being a top tier player, arguably the best player in his team's history, for my money, I would say probably so. I just think the fact that he's the only Knick of his ilk, talent wise and skill wise and everything else, to win championships, which is
I put Willis in there too, but yeah,
right, yeah, I guess that's true. But I mean, like, I don't know, something like, I think just because of, and it's not Willis's fault, but like, Willis, by the time that they hit to the second title, was kind of a shell of himself, thanks to injuries and stuff. Like, whereas Clyde was kind of still going full tilt at that point, and like was solidly the leader of that team. I was gonna say not a knock on Pat, but I guess also not a knock on Willis. But I just, like, for my money, I think that Clyde's the best Knick to ever do it.
Look, 36 and 19 in Game 7 is hard to argue with, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, nobody's come close to that type of performance, and that includes, Pat, the guy on the team right now, Brunson, Melo, anybody. Nobody's come close to that yet. So, yeah, it's just the dude. I don't know. It's like corny or whatever, but like, he means a lot to me. It's like seeing his birthday party, on MSG, is like seeing my own grandfather's birthday party or something. It feels good. And I don't know what the average life expectancy is in the U.S. anymore. I know it's always, for the most part, been like late 70s or something. So he's probably just hit or exceeded the average life expectancy of a person that lives in the United States, and for that I'm very thankful, and I hope that he lives forever and keeps doing this for at least another 5 years or something. Mike Breen was trying to live on air get him to sign a new 5-year extension, which seems maybe a little
ambitious,
a little ambitious, but even a couple more years, I desperately hope that he gets to see a championship to retire on, so that he can go out as an announcer the same way that he watching the same thing that he did last for the Knicks in winning them a championship. But it was a really fun broadcast and just a really fun day in general, getting to hear Clyde stories and see everybody appreciate him and everything else. He deserves every bit of it and more. He's a national treasure, but I don't care to share him with the rest of the nation. He's our treasure as Knicks fans, and I'm happy to get to hear him as often as we do.
Yeah, I love the guy. I always love how much Mike loves him, and and it's the coolest. As someone who's pursuing play-by-play and hopes to be in a seat like that one day, like the idea of calling games with your childhood idol, like is the dream for the Knicks, especially. That's as good as it gets. And Mike is just so incredibly good at like highlighting everything that makes Clyde special. And it's also so clear that like Clyde really appreciates that, and their friendship. It's like in some ways like we've been watching this basketball team our whole lives, and we've also been like it feels like a long running sitcom in some ways with these two best friends, and we've been keeping up with their friendship for, to your point, like my entire fandom for 20 years, for you even like a little bit longer than that. So that's amazing. I'll tell a quick Clyde story. And I'll keep it short because I know we're running long, and I've said it on the pod, but not in the last couple of years. I went to a basketball camp called Basketball City. Shout out to them. They run a bunch of Knicks camps. They ran Stephon Marbury camp every summer that I would go to, and you get to meet Stephon Marbury, which was cool. David Lee would show up. Wilson Chandler would show up. But there was a Clyde week, and I went to the Clyde camp, and I won most improved player that week. So I had him sign my trophy, and I took a picture with him. And my mom, being a Jewish mother, has him like take like 20 something pictures. And I'm like 10 years old, but at this point I have the awareness to be like, that's not cool with a Hall of Famer. So I'm like, and there are also other people waiting. So I'm like, Mom, we got to like hurry this up. And Clyde just looks down. And he's like, be nice to your mom. And that is quite literally like top 10 to 10-15 memory of my life. So shout out to Clyde, a sweetheart on air, a sweetheart in person. Just to your point, someone we are incredibly lucky to have in our lives. If I'm still doing this podcast the day he retires, I will probably be crying on air. So we'll look forward to that, but hopefully not anytime soon. Shout out to Clyde. Happy birthday. Great win for the Knicks. We'll talk to you very, very soon. We come back tomorrow with a special guest here on Locked On Knicks.